And I want to thank Reverend Dr. David Grafton and the community of Hartford Theological Seminary for this invitation. I don't take invitations lightly. I don't take them for granted. So I want to thank you. I also want to say to Imam Shaheen, thank you for what you just presented. There may be some overlap of what I share and what you shared, but thank you so much for what you've given. And I really thank you for this work that you're doing here, because it's so terribly important. So the subject for today's presentation is so important, given the current state of affairs, not only in this nation, but all over the world. The attack against Islam has been brutal and wrong, and also troubling is that the impression the world gives, and especially the impression which is shared in this country, is that Muslims just recently started infiltrating American society. Since 9/11, there has been this obsession about and held against Muslims, supporting an irrational belief that all Muslims are terrorists. And for the most part, Christians have been silent. This is wrong and particularly troubling, as this country does not acknowledge the historically proven reality of white Christian terrorism, which has been responsible for heinous violence against black people, women, Jews, and Muslims throughout our history. The blatant arrogance of white Americans, and when I say that, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I'm trying to put this in a historical context. So if you want to throw tomatoes, wait till after. But the historically proven reality of white Christian terrorism, which has been responsible for heinous violence against black people, women, Jews, and Muslims throughout our history, is just inescapable. And the blatant arrogance of white Americans, who, by the way, identify as Christians, who feel they have the right to commit violence against anyone who is not white, continues to cause pain and fear for both Muslims and for African Americans. We have all by now seen the footage of the police officers just recently who held a pregnant woman who was holding her toddler daughter, holding her at gunpoint, using violent language to get her to hold her hands up while she's holding the baby, and then submitted a false police report to justify his actions. Had it not been for the cell phone video, that woman would have been thrown into jail. You may also have heard about an employee of Starbucks who threw coffee stirrers into the face of a Muslim patron, a woman, and then lied about doing it. And you have heard of Muslim women being kicked out of restaurants because of their hijabs, and it made them readily identifiable as being Muslim. And the Christians, for the most part, are silent. The Muslim ban put into place by the current president right after his election was an episode which should cause all Americans and all Christians to feel deep shame. The fact, however, is that so-called Christian, African Americans and otherwise, are involved in oppressive behavior against Muslims, and that speaks volumes to a problem at the core of what Christianity really is. I'm going to take some people off again, I know, but in my work on the study of how America's two most sacred documents, the Bible and the Constitution, have not only failed in debunking the rightness of white supremacy, but have in fact supported it, I have come to understand that there is not just one Christianity. There is not just one God. There is not just one Jesus, meaning a historical and religious person about whom there is a monolithic belief system, and that there is not one nation. The phrase in the Pledge of Allegiance that we are one nation under God is patently untrue. The notion that we are a Christian nation is patently false. And the facts show that the roots of American racism were planted from the moment the Puritans landed in Massachusetts in 1630, and they began creation of a Protestantism which is at its root deeply racist, but is believed to be the religion of God. Anglo-Protestantism is the religion of the state. That's what we practice, Christians. Anglo-Protestantism is the religion of the state, and it has been used to perpetuate both the myth of America being Christian and the belief that God intended this country to be created by white people for white people. I would venture to say that few, if any, African-American Christians, at least not, I have to talk for myself, use I statements, but few, including myself, did not learn about the hand doctrine in Sunday school. Did not learn. It was not part of lessons. While many white Christians, especially Southern whites, but all over this country, did in fact learn the story about Ham walking in on his naked father, Noah, and how Noah, enraged, cursed Canaan, the son of Ham, to be subservient to his other two sons, Shem and Japheth. We didn't learn that in Sunday school. None of my friends, I don't think, learned it in Sunday school. Y'all learned it in Sunday school? I did not learn it in Sunday school. Never heard of it until I got to seminary. Never heard of it. That story was used not only to illustrate to the world that God ordained that there should be slavery, but also that God created one race to be inferior to white people. Nowhere in my Sunday school lessons did I learn that. We learned about Jesus. Y'all learn about it? We learned about Jesus. And about how Jesus demanded that we love our neighbors as ourselves, and that we forgive people who did us wrong, and that for us, because of Jesus, there was good news, that we were loved by the God who made us all. That was good news. And I can remember as a child sitting in front of the television and watching the stuff that was going on in the South, and my mother from the kitchen watching me and my brothers and sisters, and I guess you can see that my face was kind of tuned up and turned up because I couldn't understand what was going on, and I was getting mad. You know, I wanted to get somebody back. That's just me, Detroit and me. And my mother yelled out from the kitchen, "Yeah, you gotta love them too." I was flabbergasted. But that was gospel. That was the good news. That's what we learned in Sunday school. In regular school, we learned about the goodness of George Washington, who never told a lie, which is a lie. We learned about the Revolutionary War and Civil War. We learned the words of the Declaration of Independence penned by Thomas Jefferson that, quote, all men are created equal. What we did not learn was that before the Revolutionary War, before the Civil War, and George Washington, there were Muslims in America. We did not learn that Muslims were in this country a century before any white person ever got here. We did not learn that Muslims were in this country before Protestantism was Protestantism. Martin Luther had not even nailed his 95 theses to the cathedral in Wittenberg. We did not learn that Muslims, who by the time of slavery were correctly to be considered Muslim Americans, could read and write, and they wrote a whole lot in Arabic. We didn't learn about all of that in our Sunday school. We certainly didn't learn about it in school, and we did not learn that Muslims were enslaved as well. I've got to a point where I don't say some people were slaves, because that's not who we were. We were human beings who were enslaved. And you have to know that. Because just the moniker saying you are slaves is denigrating to our souls and to our personhood. We were human beings brought here against our will who were enslaved. And so were our Muslim brothers and sisters. We didn't learn that an estimated 40% of all Africans who were captured came from, as Imam Shaheen has already said, came from predominantly Muslim parts of West Africa. And we didn't even know. We didn't even learn in school that there was West Africa and South Africa and East Africa, which is Africa. That's right. That's all we learned. But we didn't learn that 40% of all Africans who were captured came from predominantly Muslim parts of West Africa, and that 30% of all enslaved people were, in fact, Muslim. 30%. We did not learn that good old Thomas Jefferson, who acknowledged Christianity but who also rejected Jesus as being divine, and he was instead a deist who respected reason over revelation. We learned that Thomas Jefferson respected the Muslim community and wrote in the Virginia Statutes for Religious Freedom that, quote, neither pagan nor Mohammedan nor Jew ought to be excluded from the civil rights of the Commonwealth because of his religion, end quote. We did not learn that. We did not learn that. And we did not learn that another prominent American at that time period, Richard Henry Lee, wrote, quote, true freedom embraces the Mohammedan and the Jinju, which is Hindu, as well as the Christian religion, and we certainly did not know, and we're not taught that in 1776, John Adams, who would become a president of this nation, praised the Prophet Muhammad. Praised the Prophet Muhammad and said he was a sober inquirer after the truth. End quote. How much would this comprehended social fabric have been revolutionized had we been taught that the founders had a respect for the Muslim faith? What developed here and what African Americans as well as whites have internalized is Anglo-Protestantism, or what is referred to as biblical Christianity, which is different from the Christianity of Jesus. Anglo-Protestantism might correctly be called the religion of the state or the religion of empire. And it really was begun or kind of solidified when Constantine converted to Christianity in 312 common era. And in some ways, that was a good thing. The Roman Empire had been hostile to Christians because they were not friends of the Roman government. And because Constantine had this vision or this dream where he believed that he had been told and talked to by Jesus that he was going to have this victory and have the victory, he decided it was probably a good idea to convert to Christianity. And so he did. And he was disturbed by all the violence which had been going on in the kingdoms, in the whole area that was alive at that period of time. And so he convened a council of bishops in Nicaea in 325 Common Era, and they came up with the doctrines of Christianity. But he also neutralized Jesus the Christ. He neutralized him as a force. And he neutralized him as a voice for the people who had been oppressed. He neutralized them. Jesus was depoliticized. When in fact, if you read the good news, you know that Jesus had been killed exactly because he advocated for the least of these, in direct opposition to the policies of the state. People, including scholars and historians, began to create this religion of the state, which really might have been said to be anti-Jesus, even though people will say Jesus' name. Anti-Jesus, because Jesus got on people's nerves. Jesus was in the face of the government. Jesus was in the face of the church leaders. Jesus basically said, what you're doing is not right. And they felt insecure, and they felt angry, and they felt all kinds of things. They didn't like Jesus, so they had to kind of figure out how to make this religion palatable to the state. People, including scholars and historians, began to create this religion of the state, which really might have been said to be anti-Jesus, though Jesus' name was used. Muslims had little regard for Christians, because Islam was a truly monotheistic religion. And they could not understand, especially after Nicaea, what the Christians were doing. The concept of the Trinity blew them away. How can you have Father, Son, and Holy Ghost and still have one God? So the Muslims were not feeling the Christians. Just were not feeling. Didn't have any animosity against them. Just weren't feeling it. And did not want to be converted. Did not want to be converted. And And so this division between Muslims and Christians began. And it has only increased over time. Though racism as we know it today had not fully been developed by the time that Constantine was doing his thing, Christian writers were aware of what was going on, and they were aware of the benefit of aligning themselves with the state. And so writers that we learned about in school, Origen, Tertullian, those guys, were more interested in aligning themselves and being in favor of the state than in teaching and spreading the religion of Jesus. And it's weird, it's very weird to me. I don't know if you think like I think about that. But I sometimes wonder what God was doing. Because if you believe in the sovereignty of God, which I do, you believe that God made everything. The psalmist says that everything that was, or is it John says, everything that was made by God. The fowl of one of the songs, I think it's song, the fowl of the air and the fish of the sea and whatsoever passeth through it. God did all of that. God did all of that. Which means then that God created people of color. God created black people and brown people. God created women. God did all of that. But this racism, which was caused by, or the charm of white supremacy, kind of made it so that God did not create everybody. And there were historians who said that. They were troubled by blackness. How did y'all get here? They really did want to know, how did you get here? They decided, some of them, like Benjamin Rush, who was one of the signers of the Constitution, decided that we were really white. That our skin color was indication of a leprous disease. That once we were healed, we would be white. The stories about all this are just really amazing. But the narrative that was being created and crystallized was everything that was good was white, and that God intended it to be so. The question of the sovereignty of God was ignored. God then began to believe, and this is a belief that still exists to this day, may not have created everyone, as the book of Genesis has all believed. So there was polygenesis, a theory of polygenesis, that God created white people and some other deity created everybody else. Oh, it's very fascinating. In fact, because they couldn't understand how we got here. They couldn't understand what was wrong. Why are you that color? Maybe they believed there had been a couple of gods, and they did say that, a couple of gods. A God who created white people and a God who created everyone else. Whiteness, though, very early on in history, was a standard of God, the standard of God. And early writers began not only to buy into that idea, but to perpetuate it and to spread it. Meanwhile, Mohammedanism was the, quote, only higher religion, which had made progress in Africa. A scholar in 1873 wrote that, quote, whatever may be the fortunes of African Christianity, there can be no doubt that they will long be affected by relations with those in Africa who were Muslim, some of whom he said were fanatical. Islam was, listen to this, because this is so important, because we don't know it. Islam was and is an American religion.
I don't think we heard you say that again.
Islam was and is an American religion. Here, even as the Christians, Anglo-Christians worked to develop their influence. When the Puritans landed in New England, they called themselves the American Israelites. And I was fascinated by the Imam Shaheen talking about the Exodus. The people who were coming here from England believed that they were America's Israelites. They believed that they were the new chosen people. And they believed that God had sent them on their exodus from England to this country in order to, and this is, you know what, when I say this stuff, you gotta take it up, look it up. Because when they got here, they believed that white people had been sent here by God to create a white nation. This is a Anglo-Protestantism. And they believed that God sanctioned their work to get rid of Native Americans, so the genocide perpetuated against Native Americans was okay. Because God wanted us to be a white nation. And of course they didn't show any anger or compunction or anything when they began enslaving Africans, from people from Africa. They believed that they were here on God's behalf. They believed that they were doing God's will. Now the Puritans knew some Muslims. We don't hear about that on Thanksgiving. We don't hear that. They had a dinner and the Muslims are sitting at this table. We don't hear about it, but they knew some Muslims, and they had to because the Muslims had been here for a whole century before they got here. So they knew some Muslims. They called them savages for many reasons, but one of the reasons why was because they refused to abandon their religion and take up Christianity. But the Puritans and those who followed them worked intentionally and systematically to get Muslims to abandon their religion. And at the same time, they created the narrative, vestiges of which exist to this day, that Islam was a religion unpleasing to God. So it's important to say at this point that African Americans, one of the reasons we have these issues is because African Americans became Anglo-Protestants. Why? Because that's the only religion that was being taught. African religions became Anglo-Protestants. Anglo-Protestantism is a religious system which has little to do with the dictates of Jesus the Christ. Anglo-Protestantism follows the Pauline epistles. It's much easier to call yourself a Christian and follow the Pauline epistles. Paul was so, slaves obey your masters and wouldn't require that Paul. Those who adhered to Anglo-Protestantism were fond of and did so regularly, quoting the Pauline epistles and saying that was the Bible. It's sort of calling it biblical Christianity as opposed to the Christianity of Jesus. And they quoted the passages in the Hebrew scriptures which made it okay for Africans to be enslaved, and they could blame it on God. They kind of missed and ignored the gospel. There have been studies that have been done that they missed and ignored the gospel because the gospel was too challenging. The gospel, Peter Gomes said that the gospel is scandalous. And the gospel was meant to shake you up. Because the gospel makes you wants you to be challenged and wants you to be confronted as opposed to remaining in your comfort zone. So Anglo-Protestants, in essence, ignored the teachings of Jesus and turned instead to parts contained within the Christian Bible, which supported their cultural beliefs, which included white supremacy. That's why when people say, like today, that they believe that God sent the president, I pause. And I wonder which God is that. I pause when I think about Christians who participated in lynchings. Who can lynch somebody on a Saturday night and go to church on Sunday morning, and some get Holy Communion. It makes you wonder, who's God? Because that's not my God. That's not my God. So, this Anglo-Protestantism is a different religion than the religion of Jesus, or the Christianity of Jesus. The United States Supreme Court said in 1892 that America was a Christian nation, but it's important that Christianity as a preferred religious sect for Americans was ignored in the making of the Constitution. And you also know that the name of God does not appear in the Constitution either. John Meacham, the historian, writes in American Gospel that there is a difference between being a Christian nation and one whose public religion allows victorious religious values, Christian or otherwise, to shape its manner and values. And it was the values of Paul which were really influential in shaping the manners and values of Americans. The words of Jesus or the religion of Jesus had all been wiped out. There was a struggle to define Jesus and make him white. Alan Davies has a book called Infected Christianity. And he shares that there has long been a move to push the so-called Aryan myth, which is embodied in the great race of Europeans. Davies lays out that over history, there have been 5 different Christs, created in the attempt to justify and push white supremacy. The Germanic Christ, the French Roman Christ, the Latin Christ, the Anglo-Saxon Christ, and the Black Christ. And he describes these Christs in vivid detail, explaining that they represent the struggle between Christianity and culture. Cultures were trying to make Jesus as having come and died only for white people, except for the Black Christ. That wasn't their premise. And he explains how the image of Christ remained white because it was the only way Anglo-Christians could justify their erroneous and contorted sense of who Jesus was. What does all this mean in terms of how African-American Christians relate to Muslim Americans? It means that too many African-Americans have drunk the Kool-Aid. We were taught Anglo-Protestantism and we ingested it. When Richard Allen and Maximum Jones split from the St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church, it was a black church, but it was really the white church still. Because we had been taught, or they had been taught, white theology, white beliefs. They were tired of it, and they knew there had to be something. But when the black church started, it was a group of black people still practicing white religion. Too many of us have drunk the Kool-Aid. And we African Americans, have been infected with the teachings of Anglo-Protestantism, and we have been infected with the mindset which Anglo-Protestantism has taught all of us. It means that African Americans, from being the most despicably oppressed racial group in this nation, have bought into the tendency to criticize and to fear Muslims. To criticize and fear Muslim Americans because white supremacy has basically written out of existence the history of Islam in this country. It means that too many African Americans practice or have practiced Anglo-Protestantism and not the Christianity of Jesus. And it means that too many African Americans have ignored the great commandment that you should love the Lord your God with all your mind and all your heart and all your soul and your neighbor as yourself. Anglo-Protestantism teaches that you can pick who your neighbor is. Too many African Americans do not know that Muslims were here before white people. We do not know that Muslims were enslaved along with other Africans. We do not know the huge contributions Muslim Americans have made to this country and society. Too many African American Christians and white people do not know that Muslims fought in the Revolutionary War. Muslims fought in the War of 1812 and in the Civil War and in fact in all of America's wars. Too many African Americans have rejected or ignored the gospel, which the late Peter Gomes said was and is scandalous because what it requires of us who say that we believe in Jesus. Too many of us do not know that the word jihad does not mean holy war. That it means we're to struggle to do what God asks all of us to do. They believe that Islam is a violent religion in spite of the Quran's teaching that war itself is always evil. And they do not know that the very word Islam means to surrender to God. We don't know because we don't talk because we're caught in the web of Anglo-Protestantism. We do not know that the Prophet Muhammad wrote the Quran over a period of 23 years. And we don't even know how that happened because many African-American Christians and Christians in general think that God wrote God himself. That God just sat down one day with his divine hand, with a divine hand. The Bible, I'm not fooling you. That's what many Christians believe. So we don't know that the Bible was written over thousands of years in many different lands by many different people. And we don't know that part of the reason Muhammad wrote the Quran because he was committed to bringing it into mass slaughter, the mass slaughter that was going on in pre-Islamic Arabia. We do not know the difference between Shia and Sunni. So you hear stuff on television. We buy in all that propaganda, which is on television, designed to keep us at each other's throats. Muslims, they don't understand the difference between the two groups. And we don't know that the split and Sunni Muslims began after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, who would succeed him. Although the Sunni Muslims won that argument, the split between the two groups have never healed. We do not know that out of 1.3 billion Muslims in the world, that the Shiites are in the minority, representing 200 million, but that they live in lands which are rich with oil. In other words, there just is not Islam as a blanket religion. Islam, like Christianity, like African Americanism, has levels. We don't know any of that. And we insist upon looking at Islam as it has been presented to us by the proponents of Anglo-Protestantism. We don't even know that the Shiites, you guys heard me talk about, that the Shiites are waiting for a Messiah. Much like the Christians are. The Shiites are waiting for the hidden Imam, who has not yet come. So keep all of that. Christian and Muslim always waiting on the Messiah. And we don't know it. In other words, we have much in common. What white supremacy does is to work to keep people divided, and it has created the narrative about who America is and what America believes. It has created the narrative about who African Americans are, and it has created the narrative about who Muslims are. It works to keep us concentrating on our differences and competing against each other, even as it works to protect the myth of American exceptionalism, necessary because there are more people of color in the world than there are white people. The Puritans believed that they would create a nation more moral than had been any other nation. And white supremacy is working to continue that myth. That there are more people of color in this world than there are white people is a fact which frightens them. And they will do, as they have done in history, anything to keep us at each other's necks. Remember the Bacon Rebellion, where there was a concerted effort to dislodge and disrupt the relationship between poor whites and black people. Together, those two groups represented way too much power until the government worked to dismantle it. White supremacy's aim is to maintain power at all costs. And if it can keep African American Christians and Muslims separated and at odds with each other, it is doing its job. So we have to do our job, all of us, and learn about each other and reject the myths that keep us apart. In spite of the Christ, Christians have a reputation of being morally racist, a fact which is compounded by their belief that their behavior is ordained by God. It would seem that as a first step, there ought to be an increase in making time for African American Christians and Muslims to just sit down together and talk with each other and learn from each other. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Knowledge frees us up. And it is clear that neither group, Muslims or African American Christians, are free. Brian Stevens of the Equal Justice Initiative says slavery never ended, it just evolved. And what is going on now is that we are in slavery. We are in slavery to a mythical past which is designed to keep us apart. We have to do better. We who know better have to do better. And then we have to make sure that we help others to do better. I end with this story. Yeah, I'm a Christian. Christianity has irritated me and hurt my feelings. And I will never forget when I was in West Africa. I had taken my choir here to sing all over West Africa. We were in Slave Castle at Elmina. And we had taken a tour earlier in the day. It's heartbreaking to see that place. It was as heartbreaking for me to see that as it was for me to get first tear gas in Bethlehem. What's wrong with that? Anyway, we were about to sing. And we were singing something from Roots many rains ago. Sacred bow down to me, tell me what you know. Tell me where you cried many rains ago. That's the song. That's the words of that, the lyrics of that song. And I was getting ready to direct the choir. We were getting ready. The music was up, and it was getting ready to start. And we were standing next to this dungeon where men, African men, had been shoved into this dungeon, waiting to be taken out through this long And right over that dungeon, there was a Christian church. Complete with a cross. We have to know that.